Yes, it is working. See? So, today is, what day is today? Tuesday, 10th of January. So, let's have another nice study. Let me share with you the screen. Let me just reduce a bit the size of the screen so I can see a bit of you guys and see the test. So let's start our chapter 28 on duty. And as we move along, I'm pretty sure that Ebony will feel the urge to participate even more today, right? After the collective prayer in the evening, Tobias turned on the receiver to listen to Samaritans at work in the lower zones. I learned that the patrols of workers in such missions communicate with the red quarters at set hours. I felt somewhat tired from my strenuous effort, but my heart was singing with joy. So now that I noticed that Ebony is getting prepared, drinking water, I will ask her how how he can feel tired. How what is your take about that, Ebony?
Well, I don't know for sure that um, it is a muscular, physical, tiring. Um, have you ever spent a day just in your mind thinking things through? Have you ever had a day where you're worried about a lot of things and you get mentally tired
Mm-hmm,
just thinking?
mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, it could be a kind of mental tire, um, because I don't know how else it would be. Does the perispiritual body get tired? I mean,
I did the question.
that's the only other thought that would come to mind. Huh? I'm sorry.
I did the question. Don't throw the question on me.
I
Well, yeah, we know that it's the perispiritual body he's working we have after death. So it's either that or he's mentally tired. And I don't have any knowledge that says to me that the perispiritual body has muscles that would get tired. So I think it's more of a mental thing that he feels in his perispiritual body. That's just my take.
Let's go a little bit back. I know that Denise wants to say something before I go. Denise, you want to say something?
no, no, I agree. I think it's both mental because mental effort it does make you tired. I remember when I first came to UK to speak English was really 9 o'clock. I was already sleeping because I have work all the time in their head, and I think it's body wise as well. I think because I mean he had the first day of work after so many years of not because they need to eat. They have all the same things that we have here, so we assume that somehow when they're concentrating have to move the body at the same time must as well. I think are both then.
Mhm. I will come back at the very same question to you again, Ebony. So let me do something in regards to perispirit. We we saw already that the perispirit is connected cell by cell to our physical body. Saying that the perispirit has every single organ like we have in our physical body in a different states of matter. But if it is a mirror of our physical body, they also have the same organs over there. We saw already through our study the need to replenish the energy of the perispirit. That is the physical body to the spirit. When we are talking about perispirits, we always create like a cloud thinking perispirits could be this, could be that, blah, blah, blah. It's like a balloon full of gas or whatever. But for the spirit, the perispirit is the physical body, period. Right? We saw through our study of this book that there is a structure in the astral city to provide food, to provide water, that people feel tired. This is not the first time we see on the book that the spirits, they feel tired, in need of rest, and in need to replenish the energy that they dispense through their activities. Can we be tired because we are thinking a lot? Of course we can. But we cannot be tired just thinking. Can we? I can tell you, I think a lot. And I think a lot of crazy things through the day.
I don't think just thinking, but I think if you're learning, I do think you can really get tired if you're learning, if you're really not thinking about thinking stuff, you know, but if you are really concentrating, learning something, I do feel you get tired.
When you are learning something, you are normally seated in a non-natural position, if you like. So after you be sitting in a chair for more than 1 hour, you can still feel your physical body aching because it's not very comfort. It's not very, especially if it's a wooden chair, it's not very comfy. After 1 hour, you start moving a little bit because my back hurts. Yes, I'm learning, I'm studying, and then there's a whole fatigue. Not because you're learning, but because of the whole environment. Then I agree.
But in addition to that too, you can get mentally fatigued from overthinking, from being tired. You could lie in a bed all day and have mental exchanges that can cause you to be tired. There are people who end up in mental institutions just because of that.
Yes, I agree. But in that case in particular, he just finished his shift cleaning. Nasty residues from those in the clinic, in the hospital. So in this case in particular, I don't think he's tired because he was thinking about too much. I think he was tired after a shift of work. Like any of us do. If we work 12-hour shift, on the end, we are tired. Mentally as well. We are 100% tired. We need to eat, have a shower, go to bed. But is anyone here that says something wrong? No. No, I don't think so. But as we're talking about things of the spirit, it's very natural that we think that we don't do anything when we are spirit, that we do everything by our thoughts. Because this is what we've been told so many years. We do everything by our thought. But André Luiz is telling us something different. He's showing to us when the spiritual world that was entirely different than what has been painted for us before. So it's a good start of the study, having discussions and having Ebony prepared to make more questions, right? Very good. But my heart was singing with joy. So he was not tired because he was thinking a lot. He was happy. He was really happy. We don't feel tired when we are happy. We feel tired when we don't want to do that thing. Hi, Daniel. Go on.
I think we can be happy and tired. It's not that often that happens, but I don't think that doesn't dismiss the point. I'm just trying to roll back on the cell by cell kind of thing and tiredness. I just have a question. I don't know the answer. I don't know if we have the answer exactly at the moment, but we know incarnated that our brain consumes good parts of energy that we have available. Obviously, we are not just thinking, we are doing multiple things. We are perceiving in different ways the environment and that kind of stuff. I'm just wondering if something similar happens, because if you eat, you use some energy in some way. And I'm just imagining if by doing activities and speaking and looking at stuff, processing information and itself, it could consume energy as well. I'm just imagining here that maybe there's a correlation, but I don't know if our per spirit consumes a little bit of energy to do that kind of activity. It makes sense to do, but I'm just thinking specifically about the brain.
The way I see the same method, the same process, the same characteristics applies both places, here and there. Give and take, of course, there are some differences, all right? It's not 100% the same. I believe there are different functions, different sensibilities, different functionalities, but the principle is the same. Yeah, we can get tired because we're thinking. Yes, we can get tired because we are thinking. Can we feel pain in our muscles when we do exercise on the gym? Yes, of course. Why? So we are very happy to accept that we here on earth, we are a copy of the spiritual world. But we are not prepared to accept that the spiritual world has the same thing. We clap hands, yes, we are a copy from the spiritual world, a poor copy of the spiritual world. But we are not prepared to accept that if we are a copy of the spiritual world, at least part of what we are here, we are exactly the same over there. So we have some acceptance that we need to work on the spiritism to really start to think outside the box. Like I said, yes, we are a copy of the spiritual world, but no, we don't have muscles. No, we don't eat. No. Are we a copy or not? We need to make our minds. If we are a copy, I need to be prepared to accept that we are like in front of a mirror. If we are not a copy, okay, we're not a copy. We are entirely different. But that's not what we've been told, right? So we need to make up our minds.
Daniel's question got me to think about, in some circles and even in Spiritism too, the perispiritual body is also referred to as the energy body. And we know that where there are concentrated, where the perispiritual fluid concentrates the most, and is closer to the body, we call those chakras, or the seven, the chakra points in the energy body. So I'm wondering if another way to look at it is our energy body. Okay, so we need energy to move around. we're consuming those as we work, right? And the consumption or using up those energies is causing that kind of physical sense of feeling tired. Can't we also think about it that way?
I think, yes, we can think about that too. But I think we need to study a bit more about the bodies, the spiritual bodies, and what we have, right? When we talk about perispirit, chakras, and things like that, we have more things. We have different layers. We have other things that we need to put into the equation. But what you said is right. I believe is right, okay? As we do things, we get tired in our physical body, right? Why? Because we are consuming energy. So if I wake up in the morning, I don't take my breakfast, I'm going to work, I skip lunch, by the end of the day, I'm really, really tired and hungry. Why? Because the energy that have been stored in my physical body have been consumed. What do you need to do to replenish that? You need to drink water. You need to eat food. Through the chemical reactions in your stomach, in your body, you will generate energy to replenish what you have been using through the day. So the same process happens on the perispirit. Is it exactly the same? I cannot say that for sure. But I can tell you that perispirit has organs. The perispirits need to breathe. The perispirits need to drink water. And the perispirits need to eat. If they do need to eat, I'm led to believe the same process happens as well on the spiritual world. And once again, just to make sure that we are not jumping into conclusions here, the spiritual world has so many different layers. We do not know enough the spiritual world that's beside me. So I don't even contemplate to think, to create theories about the spiritual world where maybe we can do everything by thought. The spiritual world that is next door is pretty much what we have here, in my opinion.
But the spiritual world that you described, being the one that, as you say, is far away, isn't that the foundation, the information that the spirits brought to us, that they brought to spiritism?
This is not.
I mean, as being the foundation. I mean, the way I'm thinking about this is, let's say I'm sitting in an anatomy class. We're studying about the physical body. And the textbook that we have tells us that the human body has 4 members. It has 2 limbs, 2 arms, and 2 legs, and a head. I'm just being basic. And another student raises their hand and they say, well, that's not necessarily true, because there are people with 1 leg and 1 arm, right? We see people like that on Earth. So what I'm thinking and the point I'm trying to make is what spiritism brought to us thus far in terms of the perispirit is the foundational knowledge about it, which is 2 legs, 2 arms. What we've seen in a lot of other information and even in mediumship meetings, yes, we've seen spirits who are sick, who appear with 1 arm and 1 leg and whatever. But that is not necessarily the norm. They appear like that because they are imbalanced and because they are ill. So should I say that, okay, because I see that, then that is the case for everything? Should I not accept 2 legs, 2 arms as the foundation and everything else as that I see as exceptions simply because of the reasons that they appear that way.
What is the foundation for you in regards to perispirit? Which is the reference you have?
I don't know. I haven't read anywhere that the perispirit has muscles as the human body.
I would strongly encourage you to study all the books from André Luiz. I do. And on top of that, there are other sources bringing us to the same conclusion. But once again, you need to make yourself a choice. If we are a copy or not. Because
but that's not necessarily what a copy means. A copy doesn't mean
well,
that,
copy. A copy is a copy. There's no misinterpretation there, Ebony. A copy is a copy. Or it's not a copy.
Not necessarily. I disagree with that.
If you get a piece of paper, put on a Xerox machine and press copy, if what goes on the other end is not equal to what you put in, it's not a copy.
Yeah, but I think that analogy is not, we can't use that analogy for the perispirit and the physical body. I think it's a little bit too convenient and simplistic.
I could say I could say exactly the same. I could say exactly the same. So we need to.
I could go the extreme to. This is a bit of a confusion that I have, and I can also say, let's use the sexual organs for an example. Are you saying that because we have sexual organs in the physical body, the perispiritual body has sexual organs? If it does, we know what the functions, what the spiritual functions of the sexual organs are, and it has nothing to do with pleasure. Are you saying to me that we also have sexual organs in the perispiritual body? And if we do, what's the purpose of it as a spirit?
We do have every organ from our physical body in our perispirit, including the sexual organs.
Why would we have it?
Why do I have an organ? Tell me.
No, the question, that is not the right question. The question is, why do I have a sexual organ? Not just an organ, because I'm using the sexual organ to make the point that I'm trying to make.
Yes.
That, yeah, it's a copy, but it's not, when we say copy, we understanding copy as in the human language, okay, one for one. But a copy could also mean.
Mean what?
It doesn't necessarily have to mean one for one.
So it's not a copy.
Well, maybe we're using the wrong word.
No, the Spiritism teaches that we are a copy from the spiritual world.
But then going back to my question, which is.
I answered you already. Yes, you do have sexual organs on your perispirit.
Why would we have it?
What's the purpose of it? To do exactly the same what we do here.
I disagree with that.
It's fine. You can disagree. And you can also read more. You can also.
So we use our sexual organs. We use our sexual organs in the perispiritual body to reproduce children for reproduction purposes. Is that what you're saying?
As well, yes. And I'm pretty sure that will shock a lot of people.
Well, I think it's completely nonsensical and absurd to think that. Not just shocking. It doesn't make any sense.
Why not? Tell me.
That's why I think our understanding of copy is not necessarily as it is.
So tell me why it's nonsense. Explain to me.
Well, spirits don't recreate themselves.
How do you know?
God, what do you mean, how do I know? Spiritism teaches us that
no.
God creates us. We don't create ourselves. We are not self-made.
We are not talking. My spirit was not created because my mother and father had sex to reproduce. My physical body was created. My spirit is not my perispirit and is not my physical body.
I know. So then going back to the point that I'm making, so why would we have sexual organs in our perispiritual body? And you said it's for the same reason that we have it here.
Do you know that we have registered on the Spiritism Library mention us exactly the same phenomena like mediumship, like materialization. Do you know that on the spiritual world? Okay.
Yeah.
So do you know that there are Spirit's book also mention about death of the perispirit on the spiritual world?
Yeah.
Cemeteries.
Yeah.
So why we cannot have sex?
But if they do, right, it's because of spirits who are still attached to earthly matter. That's going back to the point that I'm still talking about, because we're seeing an anomaly. It's not what the high spirits teach us. It's not supposed to happen, in other words.
You trying to refer to something that we have no information enough, that the spiritual world very elevated, and we know very little about what is close to us. So why do you want to refer your basis in something we don't have enough information?
No, I think we have enough information.
Okay. Good for you. And going to my point, we being taught by the Spiritism through the spirits that our physical body is a copy of our perispirit. That's why when we see through the book, they are not referring to a spirit. Is André Luiz as a male spirit? Is the mother of Lysias as a female spirit? There are marriages, there are consumptions. But the problem that is, we are not prepared to accept it, because we have a need to a heaven where everything is magnificent, where everything is really from the other world. We have that need since we were Catholics, since we were Jewish, we were from the time of Moses. We have that need. That's natural. If I was Catholic for 100 reincarnations, I still want to see my heaven. Regardless if I'm a spiritist today, I have that need to see a heaven like I always thought. And that's very natural. Hi, Denise.
Sorry, Guilherme. Sorry, that is the first time I hear all that, so that is very hard to understand.
I know.
So, first, if you can put some books that talks about that, to be interesting to read, to try to get my head around it. Second,
well, in André Luiz, you find enough information about the perispirits itself, right? And there are other authors in Brazil. I don't remember from the top of my head one by one, but there are books there. And some books people say, well, we cannot rely on that, blah, blah, blah. But for example, the one that mentions about cemetery is a book from Chico Xavier.
And what would be the purpose of a perispirit dying? I mean, I know that they can go, you need a new perispirit to go to another planet.
That's why I mentioned that we have a need to study the bodies. There is more than one body on the perispirit. And people have a very hard time to understand what is the spirit and what is anything else. The spirit is like the brain of the perispirit. If you let's use André Luiz as a reference here. His mother had to come temporarily to stay with him.
Yeah.
So probably she was in a place where her body was different than the body of André Luiz. She had to go through a process to allow her to be temporarily with him. It's not because of her spirit, it's because of her perispirit, her spiritual body. And there is what we call perispirit. And inside the perispirit, that's a mental, what's in English? I forgot the name in English, but it's like the mental part of the spirit. I need to get the information right in English to be able to pass that to you. But basically, is like your brain, the brain of the perispirit remains, the essence of the spirit remains, and the physical on the perispiritual body perish. Why do we need to do that? Different things. One of them, as you start to mention, is if you need to move from one planet to another. You need to acquire a new perispirit to be able to be in that place. When we die, the mechanism of the degeneration of our cells create one body for the perispirit. Is in André Luiz. When we are about to reincarnate, we lose one body to allow us to regain the flexibility of the perispirit to start the pregnancy. It's all there. There are several bodies, several layers. If it's easy to understand, there are several layers of the spiritual body. And there is also what we call duplo, that is, I don't remember the name, how they call that in English, but it's like an energetic body that comprises the perispirit and the physical body. In English, I don't know the name. I need to find the source in English. But it's there. That assembly is what creates the aura that could be seen by the clairvoyant mediums. There's a lot of information. Do we want to go that far? Do we need to source information, complementary information, also, for example, in the Vedas, in the Indian library? Sometimes we do to understand, but it's also on the Spiritism. There's a lot of information. But do we want to hear that? Because it does create a shock. I know that. But it's there. The information is available. But as ever, if we are not prepared to accept something, we will not accept something. If we are not prepared to see things like we don't want to see, we will not see. That's very human. That's very normal. That's very normal. But let me annoy Ebony a little bit more. Ebony, a copy is a copy. Not a copy.
That's annoying.
But then it is the principle. It is the principle. If it's not like that, a lot of things we've been told do not make sense at all. There is a book, there is a very good book called Perispirit, but it is not available in English as far as I know. It is massive. It's like 500 pages only about perispirit. Do you know this one, Sandra? No, it's like a block.
Yeah.
Only about perispirit.
Who is the author? André Luiz?
Zalmino Zimmerman. He compiled a lot of information together. And there's a lot of things there. A lot of things there. How, and let's talk about now pregnancy on the spiritual world. We became an ovoid. Do you know what an ovoid is? Is when our perispirit retracts to a point that we became an egg, like a mental body. We have no limbs, we have no organs, we lost everything. We lost everything. How can this spirit reincarnate? He needs to go through a process before he's able to reincarnate. One of the process is what we would call get a pregnancy on the spiritual world, because he needs to start to recreate his spiritual body to allow him to have the minimum to come to a physical body like ours. And that is also mentioned in André Luiz. I think it's Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, another nice author to read. He mentions that some spirits that have been into the avoid position, they had to go into a treatment, into some chambers to be able to recover part of the spiritual body to allow them to come into a reincarnation. And even though when they reincarnate, very unlikely they will survive the pregnancy. That's why they born and they die, or some are like a spontaneous abort, so they don't finish the pregnancy. So it is a process to reconstruct, to rebuild the perispirit of those spirits to allow them in the future to have a successful reincarnation. Is easy to accept? Nope. No, it's not. I know it's not. How can we find information about that? Takes time. I don't remember all the sources. I truly don't remember all the sources, but you have to read a lot. You have to read a lot. You have to search a lot too. And there are some authors and there are some authors. You have to choose as well which one you're going to use as a reference. Hi, Sandra.
So I think, Guilherme, is going to be a good idea. We are approaching, I mean, half of the book to think about the next one after this one. So a book from André Luiz that is more related also with the perispirit. I don't know, would be really good.
You don't have one book from André Luiz specifics about perispirit, okay. But he will mention perispirits in almost every one of them. So you need to get pieces and put things together. And the one that I like at most is Evolution in Two Worlds. That
could be the next book for us to study.
I do not recommend that.
No?
No.
Okay.
Not now. If you guys want to continue, I would suggest to continue in the sequence of the books by André Luiz, because that will prepare to what is come. Good. Evolution in Two Worlds is not easy.
Too strong, yeah, okay.
Right. And even the book, the Perispirits, for example, if we had in English, for example, it's not easy. It's really not easy. It's complicated. In Portuguese, we have 1, 2, 3 or 4 books about perispirit. And I have tried to find who Kardec was mentioning, because Kardec said he would not go deeper into perispirit because another one was already preparing such a thing. And I could not find it. I don't know. I even asked Charles, and who's the other person? Leon Denis? I don't know. I don't know. So I've used as reference what we can find in Brazil. Are they all right? Now is a question. Because the way Kardec did, he did a search through several points, and how they call that is the universality of the spiritist teachings. So there was several spirits giving the answer, the same answer, like in different parts of the world. And there is a group right now putting together a process to replicate that. And one of the topics for this group is perispirit. So they will ask questions about perispirit to spiritist centers spread around the world, and they will compile this information. So they will use the same principle as Kardec with technology that is available today. So perhaps in the future, we'll be able to have more information about that. Because it's also very simple. For example, if we have one book from one person, from one spirit saying something, is it really true? We can believe on the medium, we can believe in the spirit, but we don't have the cross-check like Kardec did. And what this group is preparing to do is to have this cross-check. So, where we are, what time is it? At last, I had work to do and was experiencing the mysteriously invigorating tonic of service. A few minutes after the set had been turned in, I heard a strange voice. Samaritans. Well, before I continue, do you guys want to talk about anything we discussed here today? Because I know that Ebony's like, Denise. So do you guys want to talk about anything else before we continue? Because I think perhaps it's positive.
I'm fine. Yeah, it's still.
Denise, you're mute.
I'm fine. I still kind of like processing it, Guilherme.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ebony is in shock as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, she asked for it, right? The question she did, she asked it twice before I answer. And somehow, I believe she knew there was something. Because when we sleep, for example, now let me put some more fire into that situation. We know that when we sleep, our perispirit goes away, right? We can go left and right. We can go to nice places and bad places. Who here can honestly say that we never had a dream that we were not very proud of? Can we?
No.
Things that we are ashamed to say here now that we did in our dream and was so real that we wake up sweating, feeling the same thing that we had during our dream. Can we say that we never had?
No, I cannot say.
So what our perispirit was doing was just a dream, or we were really doing it? With the little we know about the spiritism, about what happened when our perispirits detach from our physical body when we are sleeping, can we say that was just a dream? We cannot.
Are you speaking specifically about sex in dreams?
I'm speaking about everything.
Okay.
Sex could be one of them. Because we do.
Because if you're speaking about sex in dreams, I could make a comment on that. So, but if not, then I'll leave it alone.
No, I'm speaking in general.
Okay.
In general. We do have those kind of experiences. Because when we are detached from our physical body, we are pretty much the same as any spirit. Of course, if I'm very evolved, when I'm detached from my perispirit, my physical body, I will fly very high to places where they don't even contemplate that. But the great majority of us, we stay where we are, or we go a little bit deeper to areas that are not very nice. So there are things people don't talk. But when we start to make those kind of questions and make people think, oops, if we have any doubt, should we ask? Should we try to find information? Perhaps. Perhaps. But perhaps what we will find is not what we want. And that's positive. When we find something that's not what we want, it's because we are preparing ourselves to learn something different. Preparing ourselves to learn something different. People will be afraid to dream tonight. But one thing is true. As the time moves, we start to recognize what is really a dream and what is not a dream. When we have experiences, when we are detached from our physical body, quite often we retain that information so vivid that to some extent we know was not a dream, because that was so real that we can remember details, where we were, with who we were, when. It happens to all of us. Some people can remember more than others, but it happens to all of us. So what time is it? We have 12 minutes. So should I move on, or you want to talk about anything around that?
I wish to make a tiny comment. So, Denise, you want to go? Please go.
No. I was just saying to move on, but please go ahead, Daniel.
No, it's just that there's the other sides of all of that makes sense for me is, although it's hard to think that we may face this reality when disincarnate. And believe me, I'm trying to wrap my head around that as much as everyone. But there's one thing that is profoundly good around that speaks with me. And this is the sense of continuity of learning in the process. Obviously, I would desire to go to Nosso or to Astral City when I disincarnate, but in general, the sense that we are not disincarnating and going for a place that is 100% different from what we have now, in some way is a relief, because I would not imagine in the divine justice for you to give a lesson for someone for, I don't know, basic mathematics, and then brings high complex things, impossible things in the next chapter, or put that on the test on the next thing. So that doesn't really make sense. What makes sense to me, although it is very immature in terms of evolution, is that I will have more or less some similar tools to express myself, to try to learn. Not exactly the same, but in some way I'm not like totally disconcerted or without any clue, or 100% without any clue, unless that is evidently necessary. Just to in some way look that same situation with the eyes of kindness in some way.
Yeah, I like pretty much what you said, Daniel. And I think we need to perceive the spiritual world as a continuation, because it is a continuation. Likewise, let's say that, by the way, if you die here in UK, you're not going to Astral City. Huh? You're going to be in a city around here, because they will not pay your flight to go back to Brazil. So you will be, unfortunately, in a spiritual city around UK. We all will be. But there are hundreds different spiritual cities. Astral City is just one that has been painted for us. But we have other books that mention about spiritual cities all over the world. And let's think about nature, right? We have a process here. we reincarnate, we discarnate. On the level of astral city, we have the same process or equivalent processes between astral city level and a more evolved level. Does it make sense? Yes, it does. But I don't want to believe that. I don't want to consider that. That's fine. That's fine. But there's something that we need to find reasoning and logic. If a high evolved spirit wants to come to that degree of evolution, even on the spiritual world, somehow it has to have a process to allow that to happen. Likewise, we have a process from that level of astral city or any other city in that level of evolution to allow us to reincarnate. The laws are everywhere. The universal laws are everywhere. Do we know all of them? We don't know the laws where we are. We know a fraction of the laws where we are. Do we know the laws of the spiritual world? We know even less. But I think things start like that, making questions, trying to prove right or prove wrong. But then when you are in this process, you start to find things that you never consider. You start to find things that may be shocking, maybe untrue. But through the process of finding something, I'm pretty sure we'll find things that we never considered, or at least we never knew at the time. And I think we should keep that in mind until we die, because then we are learning until the last minute. So Ebony, I told you today would be very good for you. Oh dear. One thing that a lot of people in the spiritism, when I talk about spiritism, I'm talking in Brazil, right? Like or not, the number of spiritists are way bigger in Brazil than anywhere else at the moment. And there are a lot of things that on the beginning, I have a very hard time to conceive. And one person that passed away recently said that every time you see a book that you are not comfortable with, do not throw the book away. Put on the shelf. Leave that book on the shelf. Continue reading what you are comfortable with. Eventually, you may return to that book. And perhaps that book is not so shocking for you anymore. When André Luiz brought his books, there was a massive shock on the Spiritist movement in Brazil. Because there was no, in Brazil, there was no reference for this type of spiritual world. Here in UK, they had one, a different author, a different spirit. I learned recently that in Italy, they also had one. But in Brazil, André Luiz was the first one who painted the spiritual world as it is. And Chico Xavier, he heard very nasty things at the time, because the Spiritist movement were not prepared to accept what he was bringing to us at the time. So in the future, different information will come and will create exactly the same as André Luiz created it during his time. But as the time goes by and we start to see different things from different places, people start to get more flexible. It's the same thing that has happened with Jesus when he was there. What they did with Jesus, that was not very nice. What they did to Kardec during his time, burning books, trying to do everything to stop him. They also did. They did with Chico Xavier as well. But what needs to come will come one way or another. So it is our time's up. I'm pretty sure you will never forget this study because it was different. I am aware of it. Hi, Sandra.
And I have a question, Guilherme. So any news if you are going to change our day of study and we are going to study every week? Do you know anything about it?
Let me just stop the recording here.
Okay.
And then we can chat a little bit. The choice is yours. Is what you decide to do. So I've spoken to Rafael. I said that I need to release my time to a different project. And it's up to you. Hi, Daniel.
It's still live on YouTube, at least on my Zoom here. It highlights as a live. I'm not sure, so just informing you. Please continue.
Let me have a look to see what I can